Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's REL Mid-Atlantic webinar. We encourage everyone to interact with us via Twitter at REL Mid-Atlantic and share this webinar with your Twitter followers. Before we begin, we would like to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are some application widgets you can use. You can expand each widget by clicking on the maximize icon at the top right of the widget, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the widget panel. A copy of today's slide deck is available in the resource list widget, indicated by the green file icon at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your questions. You can submit your questions throughout the webinar. If you're having technical difficulties, please click on the Help widget. There's a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. You can also submit technical issues via the Q&A widget. Please note, most technical issues can be resolved by pressing F5 or Command-R on Macs to refresh your player console. At the end of the webinar, you can provide feedback using the survey widget at the bottom of your screen. Finally, an on-demand version of this webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast using the same audience link. A full 508 compliant version of the webcast will be available on the REL Mid-Atlantic website in approximately 2 weeks. Now I'd like to introduce Jacob Hartog, a researcher with REL Mid-Atlantic. Jacob, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Brian. Welcome everyone to the Approaches in the Region to Addressing Teacher Shortages Through Partnerships webinar. My name is Jacob Hartog. I'm a researcher with REL Mid-Atlantic. Today I'll be joined by 4 presenters. Yvonne Simms is Director of Operations at the Relay Graduate School of Education in Delaware. Douglas Anthony is Associate Superintendent of the Office of Talent Development at Prince George's County Public School System. Donna Lee Mitchell is Assistant Professor and Chair of the Master's Program in Special Education at Wilmington University. Terri Rita and Chanell Bates are the Deputy Chief and Director of Strategy and Operations at the Office of Talent Support Services at the School District of Philadelphia. We're excited to have these representatives from 4 innovative initiatives in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland joining us today to talk about their work in connecting districts with teacher education programs and addressing staffing needs. We'll give a brief background on our role as the Regional Educational Lab, some background on the research informing these partnerships, and then turn it over to our 4 presenters to highlight strategies and lessons learned. We'll leave time for a more informal discussion at the end and for your questions. REL Mid-Atlantic is one of 10 regional educational laboratories across the U.S. funded by the Institute of Education Sciences, which is an independent, nonpartisan entity within the U.S. Department of Education. The purpose of REL Mid-Atlantic is to work directly with the states and districts in Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania to help build their capacity to interpret and use data and research to address education problems. Each REL's work is driven by the needs that states and districts in its region have. We provide support in 3 ways. First, through dissemination of existing research knowledge. Second, through training and coaching around the use of data or research. And third, by conducting research studies to gather new evidence. And then we share our findings so that other agencies across the region and the country that are thinking about similar topics can benefit from the work. As much as we can, we like to post our work and resources from other RELs on our website so that they can be shared and used. This slide shows a screenshot of the homepage for the REL Mid-Atlantic website. A link to the website is included in a resources slide at the end of this presentation. Let's turn now to the topic of today's webinar. Nationwide, there are increasing challenges to meeting staffing needs in several teaching areas. the purpose of this webinar is to showcase 4 initiatives in our Mid-Atlantic region focused on connecting districts to teacher preparation programs to address shortages while also supporting teacher quality and a diverse teaching force. In the 2017-2018 school year, 48 states reported teacher shortages in math, 46 in special education, and 43 in science. 31 states reported teacher shortages in bilingual and English as a second language education. States in the Mid-Atlantic region also identified multiple additional disciplines as statewide shortage areas and particular geographic areas, cities, and districts with intense hiring needs. In recent years, the number of graduates of teacher preparation programs has declined significantly, and the number of teachers completing alternative paths to teacher preparation decreased from just under 50,000 in 2010 to about 29,000 in 2013. At the same time, many districts and states also struggle to attract, support, and retain teachers of color. The causes of this teacher shortage are complex. The retirement of a large generation of teachers at the same time as teaching preparation programs have sometimes struggled to attract students. A number of alternative routes to teaching already exist, with teacher residencies like those we'll hear about being among the most promising. Partnerships like these have existed for more than 100 years, and research suggests teacher residencies hold some promise in increasing minority placement in teaching and potentially improving student achievement. Now I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne Simms to discuss Relay Graduate School of Education's partnerships in Delaware.
Thank you so much, Jacob. My name is Yvonne Simms, as Jacob says. I am the Director of Operations for Relay Graduate School of Education in Delaware, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about our teacher residency program. So during my time, I'll tell you about our program and some of the challenges that we face and the lessons that we are still learning in forging partnerships with LEAs in our state. So big picture, Relay Graduate School of Education is a not-for-profit institution of higher education. We have been in Delaware since 2015. We provide a 2-year Master of Arts in Teaching degree, and our MAT program is also approved by the state of Delaware as an alternative route to teacher certification program, which is one of the state's many initiatives to help address the teacher shortage that we face in the first state. So at Relay, we train teachers across the state, both novice and experienced. Our novice teachers tend to be certification seeking in addition to getting their Master of Arts in Teaching degree. And today, the particular program I'm focused on is our teacher residency program. So our teacher residency program includes a 2-year gradual on-ramp into the teaching profession. In the first year, residents are engaged in an apprentice year during which they are under the tutelage and the supervision of an experienced teacher. And then their second year of the program, teachers become the teacher of record in the classroom. The teacher residency culminates in both an MAT degree and a recommendation for a Delaware standard certification in a particular content area. This school year marks our second cohort of residents, which we're really excited about. Last school year, we started with 1 partner and 4 residents, and this year we have 13 residents and 4 partners, including a partnership with the Colonial School District here in Newcastle County through a state-funded educator preparation grant to address the issue of teacher shortages and to begin to build a pipeline of highly trained teachers. So like I said, the residency is a gradual on-ramp into the profession. We know that many novice teachers are entering the profession. They're going into the classroom without a ton of support. And with the residency, our intention is to do away with that push into the deep end that many new teachers face. So over the course of the first year, residents take on an increasing amount of teaching responsibility by passing a series of what we call gateways. In year 1, there are 5 gateways, starting with something as basic as professionalism. And they increase in scope over the year so that by the end of the year, the teacher is teaching a full lesson and sometimes a full day in the classroom. These are checkpoints that ensure that the school and us, the prep program, agree that these residents are really on the path to becoming a successful teacher starting day 1. In addition to graduate level coursework, our residents engage in a weekly 3-hour deliberate practice session, and it is just that. It is deliberate practice to ensure that they are honing the particular skills that they need for success in the classroom. Schools also identify resident advisors, and these are experienced teachers to mentor and to coach our residents during their first year of the program. We're really excited about our residency as well, as we found that this is an opportunity for our school partners, charters, and districts to increase the level of diversity in the teachers entering the profession and to grow a pipeline of teachers within their schools and their districts that they otherwise would not have. And we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So, like I said, this is our second year of implementation of the teacher residency program, and we've encountered some challenges, and we are currently learning lessons as we think through what implementation looks like as we grow this program. We found in Delaware that depending on the school or the district, the context really matters, particularly for recruitment strategy and implementation. The residency in a large suburban school district like Colonial looks different than it does at a smaller charter school. So first and foremost, we've realized that we need to discover who the key players are at our LEAs who are committed to driving systemic change through a residency program, and we need to make sure that they're mission aligned. We've learned that it makes sense to have a different point person at each. So at a larger school district, we may be in communication with an HR or talent director or even regional superintendents, whereas at a local charter school, we're collaborating directly with the CEO or principal or sometimes even a program director. I think also we've discovered that there needs to be a level of transparency around who's involved in the planning and the implementation of the teacher residency program. So if we're working with a district and we're communicating with folks at the district or the central office, we need to make sure that there's not a disconnect between the principal and the resident advisor and those folks who are on the ground level who are helping us to implement the program. So making sure that our processes are clearly defined is key, and that helps ensure that the resident's experience is seamless from beginning to end, and that all stakeholders involved understand their role, understand their expectations, and that the processes are communicated and fully understood. An HR director may recruit a resident, but after that resident is accepted to the program, at a certain point, we have to hand off that resident to the folks on the ground. So just making sure we're aligned about expectations and roles. And finally, as we grow, we need to understand fully the challenges and the inner workings of each partner. And as we do that, we want to ensure that we're choosing partners who are not only committed to developing quality teachers, but also diversifying the educator pipeline and who are invested in the residency as a long-term strategy. So with our smaller charters, at the start of the school year, we realized there are often staffing changes and vacancies. And so it's tempting for a principal to want to fill that open position with someone who's been accepted to the residency. But that resident isn't prepared to step into a full-time teaching position. In fact, they sought out the program for the extra level of support. So we're not setting that resident up for success by launching them out into the deep. And so we at Relay have to do a better job of investing our partners about the long-term benefits of developing that novice teacher. So again, context matters, and each school and district operates differently. In order for us to expand, it's crucial for us to understand the different perspectives and the different cultures of our school partners, whether they be a district or whether they be a public charter school. And our desire is to grow the residency. Currently, we are partnered with schools in Newcastle County, but eventually we would like to move what we call in Delaware downstate, so to Kent and to Sussex counties. And we realize that in order for us to successfully do that, it's crucial for us to make sure that the appropriate people at the district and the schools are invested in the residency, not only as a way to expand and diversify their educated pipeline, but they also see the residency as a part of a long-term strategy for preparing their new educators and eventually retaining them. So with that being said, thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jacob.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Next, we have Douglas Anthony of Prince George's County Public Schools to talk about their University Partners Initiative.
Thanks, Jacob, and greetings from sunny Prince George's County on this lovely fall day. Prince George's County has over 130,000 students, over 9,000 teachers, and serves over 200 schools. And so our context, as Yvonne said, I think is extremely important because it matters. Prince George's County has over 25 unique partnerships. Initially, we created programs that were very similar in scope, and the only major distinction or differentiation was in the school name, the professors, and etc. For instance, we had an Admin 1 certification program at several schools for teacher leaders. We became a lot more intentional when instead we looked and worked with each university to create a niche-based program specific to the needs of the district. So one university offers a certification with an emphasis on supporting English language learners. Another university offers a certification with an emphasis on the urban leader. Unrelated to our Admin 1 programs, we have a university that offers a degree for paraprofessionals who want to become special education teachers, and yet another university partner that offers a program for administrative assistants to obtain bachelor degrees. Along with this, we have professional development schools, or PDS schools, with two universities, Bowie State University and the University of Maryland, where our student teachers learn their craft in their internship experience. And most recently, we are working with the university on a certificate program for all teachers and administrators that focus on the impact of trauma on children and learning. So these are just a few examples from our portfolio of university partnerships and the unique opportunities that they offer. On the next slide, you'll notice that we start to examine challenges. And there's several challenges when working with university partners and starting to establish healthy partnerships with universities. This slide highlights a few given our unique context. Understanding each other's goals, objectives, missions, and work. As a district, we wanted teacher preparation programs that reflected on PGCPS context for working with students as one of the 25 largest urban school districts in the country. Our goal is to have our teacher candidates and novice teachers have an authentic program at the university level that matches our district context. This was a challenge in some respects given the bureaucracy to changing and approving course changes and programming at the university level, even when the willingness was there. When you think about developing both short and long-term benefits to all parties involved in a partnership, as a district, many opportunities to partner came to us as small one-time grant universities received for a short period of time, or really more like a project. It was also true the other way around, where we, the district, wanted university support on a project. However, time was never taken to explore the long-term goals, possibilities, and results that the project, more importantly, the relationship, could yield if we thought about it both in the short term with the long term in mind. So we produced multiple one-off projects that didn't yield the long-term benefits it could have if we were more strategic. We also found that communicating effectively, while it seems very straightforward and easy, became a barrier and a challenge we had to recognize. We had a marketing report done that was conducted to examine our district partnership relationships. And the findings stated that there was no singular point of contact in the district, and the universities found it difficult to communicate with the district. One of the first things we did in Prince George's County as a result of this finding was to establish my office as a primary point of contact for university partnerships. Now the flow of communication is cleaner and more conducive for all. We also know that collaborating intentionally is extremely important. So in order to develop a partnership, there has to be an ongoing, purposeful opportunity to meet. Because we had this orientation around projects historically and not partnerships that really afforded that ongoing conversation, this continued to be a barrier until we established regular meeting dates, convenings, and protocols to work together. Our convenings are now where we meet to talk about every aspect of district university work, including teacher pipeline, teacher shortages, and the like. Solving mutual beneficial problems of practice. Initially, we focused on projects and grants that we thought were interesting, but these projects and grants weren't necessarily interesting to both the university and the district. For example, one year a university partner was interested in doing a project together because there was a significant research opportunity to the project that they, the university partner, found particularly interesting. So the university was like, we will do this project, conduct the research, eliminate the findings, and move on. While the district saw the same project as an opportunity to have researchers and professors work together with schools to help solve problems. While it may seem like we were solving the same problem in this instance, what was important to each only mattered to each, and so it wasn't a mutual investment in addressing the problem. Now, a perfect example of where we've grown in this area that we're working on right now that was a recently constructed problem of practice. Ineffective instructional practice related to core areas of numeracy for students of color in grades 3 through 8. So you can see with that level of specificity that was developed in partnership with the university and the district at the table. This problem of practice not only leverages the expertise of the university professors, but the expertise and support from the recent graduates of our university's doctoral program here in Prince George's County, which are comprised of all PGCPS employees. That is an example of a huge shift in our thinking and our work, and the unique ways that you can develop partnerships with local universities. On the next slide, PGCPS University Partners Initiatives Lessons for Universities. Currently, many of the teacher preparation programs at the universities do not reflect the current challenges in public education adequately as I speak with new teachers. We recently hired 1,100 new teachers, and each year I have the opportunity to work with them each and every month. Some elements of the current landscape that I would point out: supporting and teaching students impacted by trauma, understanding the context of social media with today's students, i.e. cyberbullying, the digital native learner, teaching students with autism, teaching students with special needs, and teaching under ESSA and the implications for teacher evaluation are part of the national conversation and the local landscape of education. So given the shortage of teaching and education majors at the university level, we need to start the pipeline earlier. School districts have to be intentional about creating high school programs or academies that provide a space for high school students who are interested in becoming teachers and have access to coursework and experiences in education in high school. Finding creative ways for high school students to begin their educational journey as a future teacher reinforces the beauty of the profession itself and also provides an explicit model for the profession as a whole. Moreover, if local high schools and universities connect on this pipeline, opportunities, scholarships, dual enrollment, credits, etc., become possibilities to recruit and retain teachers in the neighborhoods that they come from or live. Slide 19, lessons for the district. PGCBS has created several programs that encourage students to go into education. Of course, you have things like career days and opportunities in high school organizations and clubs that support future teachers. We also have a joint partnership with Prince George's Community College called the Teach Institute, which is designed to have high school students take classes for teaching certification at the community college with the goal of completing their full degree at a four-year institution, in this case, the University of Maryland. We also have the Teacher Academy of Maryland, or TAM, a high school career technology education program that is affiliated with 3 of our high schools in the district. There are several concrete ways that you can address mutual district-university challenges. We found that creating a formalized agenda and holding meetings quarterly with all of your university partners to prioritize and discuss the challenges they share is a great way to continue the dialogue. We actually have one example coming up on November 7th, 8th, and 9th, where we're working with the University of Maryland Johns Hopkins to create a university district conference called Greater Impact. Another way is to create a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, with each university partner that addresses the nature of the relationship and creates buy-in on the specific challenges, i.e. the coursework design, data sharing, retention, and preparation work. Also, another idea is identify a method or platform for tracking university graduates in their ongoing succession and progress in the district, and share that data regularly. We have found that universities are very much interested in the work and the development and succession of their students, as of course the district is interested in building the capacity of those students and hopefully having them see themselves in the organization for years to come. And the last strategy that I would say has been successful for us is to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the programs, courses, and internship experiences and design actionable next steps to improve based on the data and evidence that you see daily. And so those are just a few of some of the concrete ways that I think you can address those challenges and build a stronger, healthier university partnership. That's it from me for now. I'll turn it back over to Jacob.
Thank you so much, Doug. Our next presenter is Donna Mitchell, who will speak about Wilmington University's Paraeducator to Teacher alternative route to certification.
Good morning. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our program. Wilmington University, also located in Delaware, is a university that our mission is to work with individuals who, non-traditional university students who are most in the working field. Our graduate programs are courses that are all at night, and so we had a large population of our students already enrolled in our teacher prep programs who are paraeducators across the state. And our first alternative route to teacher certification program in the history of the university was approved this past summer, so it's very, very new. The Paraeducator to Teacher ARTC program is designed to support paraeducators who are pursuing teaching. We are partnering with the 19 school districts and 5 charter schools currently. It offers a full master's degree, much like the Relay MAT program, focusing on special education and a content area. We support our paraeducators in the 2 to 3 years that it takes to complete the program and the degree. The paras and teachers are supported by coaches from the university who work regularly with them in the classroom and collaborate with their building administration and their school mentors. Many of our paraeducators have been in the classroom for years, some for decades. Paraeducators can begin the coursework and continue that first year as a paraeducator, or they can move, and then they can move to the teacher of record in year 2, or they can begin the program and pursue teacher of record immediately, finishing the full degree as the teacher of record. The program grew out of a need for quality special education teachers at all grade levels and subject areas across the state, and it provides a pipeline for the paraeducators that are already working in the classroom. As a former high school principal, if I had paraeducators that were interested in becoming teachers, I did all that I could to invest in them, because my philosophy was they're in the classrooms with working with the teachers and the students, and they're going into this eyes wide open and they want to remain in there. So supporting them makes the most sense. Of the 107 paras or teachers we currently have in our program, we had no idea it was going to take off like this, but we're excited. It's a good problem to have. 40% of these paras and teachers are teachers of color, and the program has really ballooned in this first 4 months, so we're excited to have it continue. Next slide. Some of the challenges that we've encountered in just the few first months include developing professional growth plans that are personalized to the paras or teachers. When we look at our statewide programs that are provided for novice teachers and for professional growth of all educators in the state, we have the benefit of many statewide programs, and so across LEAs, they're using similar systems or similar processes, but as we've heard already, implementation varies at every single building. So making sure that those plans are personalized and meeting the specific needs of each of the teachers and paras is first and foremost in what we're doing. We're committed to getting it right. Many of our induction programs, as I said, although it's statewide, they're implemented differently at each building, but for the most part, a lot of them take on the one-size-fits-all model. So we want to work collaboratively with the LEAs to ensure that the requirements that our candidates have in their degree program are aligned to what they're required to do in their comprehensive induction program, so that we're not adding additional work to that new teacher's plate as they try to do the best they can in the classroom. Our program is a full master's degree, again, like Relay, and we're working with those districts who may not be as familiar with an ARTC program that offers a full master's degree. Many of our previous ARTC programs were a list of courses, and they didn't take the amount of attention and time that a full degree does. So we want to work cooperatively with them to support the paras and teachers. Each of our districts signs an MOU with us, and we want to make sure that that memorandum of understanding is a mutually beneficial partnership, that it works both for the LEA as well as the university, and that the teacher candidate or teacher in the process is being supported and provided everything that they need. Because we're a full degree, we are bound to CAPE requirements and the Council for Exceptional Children Specialized Program Assessments, our SPAs, and we're always aware of the requirements, and we want to make sure that our paras and teachers are able to demonstrate their competencies in not just the courses that they take, but all of their experiences in the program. Next slide. back to the other slide. One challenge that we anticipated but turned out not to be such a great issue was finding special education mentors to work with our paras and teachers in the schools. At first districts as well as the university, we thought that might be a challenge because it's often hard to identify mentor teachers willing to work with novice teachers. As a former principal, I experience that all the time. One of the unique things about our program in teacher prep programs is we bring on many of our mentor teachers as adjunct faculty. And so they work very cooperatively with the coaches, and they participate in all of the university professional development opportunities. And I think that opportunity added an incentive. So we haven't really experienced much of an issue around finding school-based mentors. Next slide. Some of the lessons learned in our short time was that, as I said, each LEA is different, and in many cases, each school is different. Critical to the success here is the leadership at the building level. Working collaboratively with the building principals is a keystone to having this be successful. I and each of the coaches we brought on board have all been building leaders in our work experience. So this was a necessary criteria so that the relationships with principals and HR directors were built on the foundation that we know what it means to lead a building and to support new teachers and paras as they're seeking to become teachers. The relationships and communication are very important. The increase in the ARTC programs in Delaware came about as a result of the state eliminating emergency certifications in special education. And our state now issues certificates of eligibility only to those who are enrolled in a state-approved ARTC program. We have to collaborate with and communicate across all of the ARTC programs here in Delaware if we're going to make any impact on the teacher shortages and the landscape of our teacher demographics. We meet regularly with the state and all of the ARTC programs so that we're all on the same page. At the end of the day, we're all providing quality teachers for the classrooms across this state, so it makes sense for us all to be on the same page. One of the early successes has been the cooperation with schools to identify those paraeducators who wish to become teachers, or they identify as individuals who would make good teachers, and to work with those paras to build their skills and knowledge to be successful in their transition. A primary area that we focus on in this, as Yvonne said, is the dispositions. And we all know how critical dispositions are to a teacher's success. So we make that a real primary focus in that year one. We're excited by the early successes of the program, and we look forward to all of the paras becoming the best teachers they can be. One real recent challenge we found that I didn't include in the slides, but it kind of took me by surprise, is that if we have paraeducators that have been in the classroom for 10 years or more in Delaware are faced with a critical decision when they're offered a teaching position, they're finding that with regard to their salary, it is a lateral move in many cases. And in one case, I had a paraeducator turned down a teaching position because it would have been a pay reduction. She was moving across districts. So that's a challenge that I think we're going to have to work on. But we want to make sure that we do it right and that we get the best teachers in our classrooms for our students. And again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about our program, and I'll turn it back to Jacob.
Thanks so much, Donna. Our final presenters will be Terri Rita and Chanell Bates, who will speak about the School District of Philadelphia's Teacher Residency Program.
Great, thanks, Jacob. This is Terri Rita. I'm the Deputy Chief in the Office of Talent. So in terms of our district, we have 130,000. We serve 130,000 students across 225 schools. We hire about 1,000 teachers every year, and we have a clear anchor goal in the district to ensure all students have access to great teachers and leaders. So The genesis for the teacher residency program for us was to figure out how we can hire stronger candidates who would stay in our schools for longer. So we're really focused in our teacher residency pilot on obviously strengthening the pipeline for our hard-to-fill content areas and ensuring really strong professional development so that our new teachers would persist in their roles. So of our cohort 1, our pilot that happened last year, 65% of our residents had prior experience in the school district, which was just a huge win for us, and about 55% of them identified as people of color. So next slide, Jacob.
So I'm going to jump in and just talk a little bit about challenges that we experienced during that year, and obviously I think other folks have started to add since. And in addition to that, lessons learned that we think would sort of be instructive to other folks considering residency programs. So one of the big challenges, and I think this is probably something that we anticipated, but obviously the degree to which it became a challenge showed up in various places, is really about aligning efforts and expectations. I think we think about working with organizations that have previous experience with residencies, and in some cases they were more experienced in working with those programs than maybe the district had been, considering that this was just a pilot for us. So obviously there were a lot of things that we were learning as we were going, and just really thinking about expectations from the district of partners who are bringing in future teachers, thinking about the expectations of residents themselves. I mean, I think there was a lot of that also emerged in some of our initial conversations and sense. And then those specifically of partners. So we had to sort of think about ways and structures to put in place just to identify what those expectations were, and ensure that our programming was addressing those things specifically. I think communication in most cases is probably the best solution to alignment of expectations, and we recognize that the need for more information, both from the district and also from partners and residents, only help to sort of build our bank of knowledge around the type of things that would typically pop up for a resident or for a partner, and thinking about ways to address those things. I think one of the natural places that we saw in that was just a desire for the district to provide more structure. And so I think as an entity that has significant experience running schools, the residency part of it was a little bit new, so I think there was a hesitation, at least on our part, to overly structure the relationship. And so I think we sort of fumbled through that a little bit, but ultimately got to a place where we felt comfortable that what we were providing was aligned to the needs of the district. Another challenge, which I imagine other districts share as well, is long-term resource planning. The investment on the district's end per resident is about $80,000. So once we consider a salary or stipend, benefits that our residents receive, and tuition assistance that goes directly to the partner institution, we're paying roughly that amount, or contributing roughly that amount to the resident experience. And right now we're sort of thinking about funding on a year-to-year basis, and if there is any desire on our part, which I think, we're in this space now, to think about 3- and 5-year planning around the residency program, when you're considering when you're considering funding on a year-to-year basis, it's really difficult to do that. So we recognize that any attempt that we made to think more broadly could be limited in the short term to the resource implication here at our central office. I would say related to scope, this was something that we had started to reach out to other districts just to learn a little bit more about what does centralized support to the residency program look like. So, we were sort of everywhere from case management style support to very high impact sort of conversations with our partners to think about how they could enhance the experience that residents were having. I think the trouble in that is that we only have one residency coordinator. So when we're talking about 20 residents, it's probably not that difficult to maintain that, but as we talk about growth, it is really difficult to sustain that type of, or that broad scope of support from soup to nuts, so to speak. So we've really been trying to identify the most appropriate use of our centralized resources and how that could trickle out to a better experience for residents and partners. I think we also started to navigate, which I think, this was a challenge when we were putting this presentation together, and it is something that we have been working deliberately to sort of erase this distinction between a teacher and a non-teacher. And I think a resident would sort of sit in a non-teacher status, but in our systems, in most cases, they were limited access to the type of information that a teacher might use to make decisions. So we had to really think about structurally how do we advocate for our residency programs and think about them within the context of school district systems and give our residents every advantage that a teacher would have that might help them to think more proactively about what ways they might engage with students. So next slide. So on the lessons learned, so I talked a lot about all the challenges that came up, and if we were to sort of crystallize those into a list of things that we believe would be instructive for others headed down this path, the very first one, I think, is around the benefit and value and need for really strong partnerships between the school district and university partners. I mean, naturally, we saw strength of partnership at the school level where there were some highly engaged principals that were working very deliberately with university partners. But as it relates to the overall experience, we wanted to make sure that the district was playing a key role in helping to shape that experience as best as possible. And in some ways, that also means bringing to bear resources here at our central office that could help inform instruction. We're thinking about alignment of professional development. So it does not feel that a resident in one school has a distinctly different experience from one and another. So just would love to sort of underscore the value of that. What that looked like in practice was, weekly calls, which I think, you've heard previously in this discussion, for problem solving, for support, for questions, and really thinking about how that information is synthesized to sort of talk about the typical experiences that partners may have. I think we also started to implement quarterly meetings, and the goal of that is really to think about model development. Not one that we necessarily are owning, but really thinking about how the experience from one school to the next or one resident to the next is aligned more than it is misaligned. So just to ensure that we are saying promising practices are implemented across the board. So we definitely wanted to think about how we could help support partners by just crystallizing that information in our conversations. The next one, which I think is something that we've started to stumble through, is really how we, in working with university partners that are working across a variety of contexts, how are the programs adapting to a district versus a charter context? And I recognize that there's so many layers in that conversation, but I think for our purposes, we really wanted to acknowledge that there were some key differences and really think about how programs sort of spoke to those things. So if instructional strategies within a charter were very structured and the expectations that teachers had, the expectations of teachers in those settings was really set, and you walk into a room and you know that you're going to see a do now in the first 5 minutes. What happens in a district context where that is not necessarily the standard? So we definitely wanted to acknowledge that was really critical to the planning of the programming going forward, and that university partners being adaptable was something that we realized was really important, particularly as we went down the path of identifying additional partners to add to our residency program. I think we also recognize that the central office was a key broker, right? So as we talk about principal relationships and we talk about our residency coordinator that is based in our talent office, we also started to have conversations around how we should engage with assistant superintendents and other offices within our central office that could also provide better alignment of experience so that it is not distinctly different from partner to partner or from school to school. And I think the buy-in that we've received from our assistant superintendents has changed, I think, the face of this program, or at least as we start to think about the future of it. There is a lot of investment in this as a future talent pipeline for teachers, and particularly quality teachers, STEM teachers, teachers of color. So I think folks are starting to recognize the benefit and are starting to identify ways that alignment can happen with our existing systems. So one of the other things that we learned is that our residents have very clear expectations of timeline, a process of what would happen from the residency year to their first year as a teacher of record. And in most cases, we discovered these things when it was probably a little bit too late. So if there are ways that you can outline for your residents what to expect within the first year, if there are key processes that they are going to take part in, how do you message to them so that it does not feel that they are part of the bureaucracy in some respects. So we've gotten much better about communicating directly with residents, and also just, acknowledging where ideally we would love for you to stay at the same school that you are doing your residency year. And we also have needs across the district that may align better to the area that you have studied. So just making sure that we're clarifying for a resident, like, you may not be in the same place next year. It really is based on where vacancies are across the district. So we've started to do a lot more messaging and communicating with residents. So just to give you guys a sense of where we are now, we started in the first year with one university partner. We are now at the point where we have 5 university partners and are sort of navigating our way through that. And we're really excited about the potential for growth in the number of residents. So we're really pushing to identify and onboard 100 residents in the year ahead, which we hope will sort of put a dent into that 1,000 teachers that Terri mentioned earlier. That generally is the target that we're trying to reach every year. So, adding 1,000, quality folks who've been trained within our schools, who have experience what it is day to day to be in a school district building, for us is a win all around. The other piece that we have started to build in is just a conversation around what evaluation might look like. So how might we leverage our internal offices that do research and evaluation to just give us data about the experience. I mean, ultimately, we would love to be able to link this to student outcomes, and so the path of identifying all the key data points that we need now and over time is something that we're starting to explore. So those are, just to give you a glimpse of things not on the slide, sort of a status check on where we are in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Terri and Chanell, and thanks to all our presenters today. I'm going to be joined now by my colleague, Amy Johnson at the REL, who will be facilitating our questions and answer session. And we'd like to hear your questions for our presenters. I believe you can submit them in the Q&A box at the bottom, and my colleague, Michelle Lee, will help incorporate those into our discussion. So looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. Hi, everyone. This is Amy Johnson from the REL Mid-Atlantic, and as Jacob said, I'll be facilitating this Q&A session, which is really the time here for to open this up in a much more informal way, and for you as audience members to take advantage of the opportunity to really ask questions and hear in more detail from 4 programs that are doing some very interesting, innovative things. So I encourage you to go ahead and submit your questions. We have some already, and so I'm going to go ahead and start with one about, and I'm going to really direct this question to each of our presenters. We'll start with you, Yvonne, and it's a question about what process you use to determine who should actually be at the table and included in your respective effort. So, Yvonne, can you go ahead and kick off the response to that question?
Yes. Thank you, Michelle. And the question is, what's the process for deciding who should be at the table?
Yeah, and included in the effort that you've started.
Yeah. So again, it's really dependent upon the context of the school or the district. So we forged a pretty close partnership with folks at the Department of Education, particularly in the educator preparation department. And so if it's within a district context, we're asking, who at that district is the person who has the decision on implementing programs such as residency. And so from there, we may get a recommendation and reach out to that individual. And like I said before, oftentimes it's not the superintendent, but it's someone who is responsible for hiring decisions. So it may be a talent director or an HR director. Sometimes it is a director of schools or a regional superintendent that we're reaching out to. Particularly with the Colonial School District with this educator preparation grant that's funding our residency partnership there. It was a director of schools, and so it really depends. We also have pretty close relationships with school leaders of charter schools in Newcastle County, and so around this time last year, we basically went on a tour, if you will, just to shop the residency with folks that we've already worked with who've sent their teachers through Relay just for the master's degree program. And so we know, at certain schools it may be the principal, and then they may hand us off to their director of operations. Again, the context really matters. So I would say getting recommendations and then also forging relationships with school partners to know who within their specific context would really be key to implementing the program.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Yvonne. Doug, do you want to chime in on that question?
Sure. I think for us, excuse me, I think for us, in particular, large urban districts, I imagine all school districts struggle with sometimes being siloed. And so we try to have regular standing meetings with a cross-stakeholder group of the system. And so as we get data about the needs of our schools and our employees and think about, what is important as we think about the overall planning for the system. So to give you a quick example, if we're planning to develop more programs that have an emphasis around science, around STEM, and we might build schools that have that as a focus. What does that look like in terms of how we both train teachers and administrators at the university level? And so we would talk with our universities around the types of programs that they have that could support that effort so that we can prepare both that, that school and the school community for that type of level of support. So internally, we would then also talk with, obviously, our curriculum instruction and teaching and learning folks who handle science to help design that coursework or at least vet the coursework that that particular university might be proposing. We would also include, obviously, other central office stakeholder groups, my office, end users. So you want to think about teachers and administrators who have come out of certain schools and programs to give us some of that actual anecdotal and qualitative evidence as to what worked and what didn't work. But we really do leverage our convenings as opportunities to talk about those things. But we also use the data in terms of our system and what the system's needs are so that we have stakeholders from each of the respective departments informing the decision-making on the types of programs and efforts that we need support from our university partners with. So it's a very collaborative effort, but our process is to really use our internal data, needs of the school system, broker that opportunity into conversations with our university partners. And that's how we got to this idea of having a diversified portfolio. It's easy to have universities continue to offer what they offer, but when you start having conversations about what would really be beneficial for the district in terms of context, people actually can distinguish, universities started to distinguish what they were really good at, and that was helpful for us.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Doug. Very helpful. Donna, same question for you.
I'm sorry, I was distracted by another question, but so we try really hard to do to collaborate with our districts and strategically, or as I believe Doug put it, intentionally collaborate with their partners. I think one of the issues is or challenges we're dealing with is looking at long-term strategic planning for a pipeline. So when you look specifically at the paraeducators, these are individuals that we already have in our system, and they're already identified as educators in Delaware, and they're permitted. So having districts, one of the things some of the schools are starting to do is shift that thinking around having that particular pipeline in their district work for them and create a sort of succession planning program and hire specifically paraeducators for vacancies that are pursuing teaching. And then that allows them to take that time before there's an opening to work with that individual and identify skill sets and provide any support. And if we did that strategically across all areas, I think it would help to make an impact on the vacancies and the fact that we often have special education positions that sit unfilled, and there are substitutes that go for sometimes a full year in a classroom. And we really want to shift that and get away from, just kind of the whack-a-mole concept. But we are starting to sit down and have conversations with the districts about how to be strategic in addressing this.
Good, thanks. And Terri or Chanell, in terms of the teacher residency program in Philadelphia, same question. What process did you guys use to determine who ought to be included in the development of that effort?
Good question. I think that we were significantly less strategic than other folks are when listening to their answers, because it was definitely a hurry up, how quickly can we implement this kind of approach? And on the back end, I think we paid for that because I don't think we got as crystal clear as we needed to be with assistant superintendents and with schools regarding what the responsibilities for residents were. So I don't think we were purposeful about articulating it, and it was really very much managed by the Office of Talent. And now on the back end, I think we're doing a lot more to try to involve principals, the Office of Academics, the Office of Schools, to ensure that our strategy aligns with theirs.
Great. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to turn now to a question specifically for Yvonne. But if others have a perspective on this or want to chime in, feel free. But Yvonne, the question is, do you have any cohorts with any Head Start or early Head Start programs? And if not, would you consider that area of education?
So currently, none of the residents in our cohort are pursuing early childhood credentials, only because we are approved by the state to offer elementary certification and then middle and secondary science, social studies, math, and ELA certification. So we provide content-specific training in those areas, but not in early childhood. What I will say, though, is from the perspective of the state, in terms of, our students being enrolled in an ARTC program, they just want students to be enrolled in an ARTC program. The certification is, from the perspective of the state, the student being enrolled in an ARTC program, they're not too much concerned about the particular content. So we have had elementary immersion teachers who are not in the residency, but who were teaching in elementary context, specifically K through 2, pursuing their birth through 2 certificate and getting elementary, I would say, cert while coming to us. So it's something that could be an option, but at this point in time, we don't have any residents who are pursuing that particular certification.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on the question of sort of early childhood education, Head Start, early Head Start programs?
Amy, this is Donna. We actually, of our candidates, 20% of them are early childhood education, and a lot of that is due in part to the fact that Wilmington has a partnership with our community college, and they offer an associate's degree, and I think this addresses another question that's asked as well, that they offer an associate's degree in early childhood, and many of our candidates begin there before they move to their bachelor's degree in education with us. And historically, we have had a challenge with educators passing the core academic praxis 1 exam in Delaware, and that was eliminated last year as an entrance criteria for our teacher prep program. So I believe that has had a tremendous impact on our landscape or demographics of our teacher prep candidates now. And so in our ARTC program, the state requires that you have a bachelor's degree already. And the bachelor's degree and or associate's degree is what drives your content area for the special education. So a lot of our candidates came to us with either the associate's degree in early childhood or an undergraduate degree in early childhood education studies. So we have had quite a few of those individuals hired in our districts as teacher of record. They were paras working in that. One of them is actually hired as an itinerant teacher working with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So we do have a shift in the districts now for hiring kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers with early childhood background versus historically they were asked to have a K-6 elementary background, education, and praxis because they wanted to be able to have the flexibility to move them across elementary schools. But with our emphasis on early learning in Delaware, I think that has shifted in a good way. So.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Okay, this next question is for Terri and Chanell at the School District of Philadelphia. And the question is, are residents allowed to serve as substitutes? If so, are they paid as a substitute?
Residents are not typically allowed to serve as substitutes, so they're not paid as substitutes either. So we make pretty explicit with the schools that residents should not be covering if and when teachers are absent.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question is again for all of you, and why don't we start this one in the opposite order. So I'm going to start, Terri and Chanell, with you guys in Philadelphia. The question is an interest in hearing more about program evaluation being used and what outcomes you're measuring as part of your program strategy. So Terri and Chanell, let's start with you.
One, it's a great question. I think it's something that we're trying to figure out the best way to correlate the experience of the resident with student outcomes. I mean, at this point, I think our most senior residents are entering their first year as teacher of record. So we don't quite yet have a large enough sort of sample size to talk about the impact of the residency program, but it is something that we're trying to bake in into our planning and thinking. It's just like, how are we going to take sort of intermediate post checks and what particular data we will be using to define progress. I mean, I think when you're talking about 5 institutions, like partner to partner impact. But I think it is a little bit of a challenge that we're hoping to sort of learn from other districts, the best way they may have made this sort of connection between residency programs and student outcomes.
Maybe we'll get some answers next, turning to the other folks for you. Donna, same question for you in terms of program evaluation and the outcomes that you use.
In Delaware, we have teacher preparation scorecards issued biannually, and the areas that were measured on our recruitment, candidate performance, placement in the teacher prep, and that is an indicator of, are we placing candidates for their clinical or residencies in high-need schools or in critical need areas. Retention, and that looks at a 1 and then a 3-year retention rate once they're hired. Graduate performance, that's measured by administrator survey and graduate input as to their readiness. And then as the perception is also a survey given to both the candidate and the administrator. So we're looking at our, I believe, third iteration of our scorecards coming out, and they're rated on a 4-tier process, with 4 being low, 1 being high. And so most programs aspire to be at the 1, 2, and that allows them to be approved and retain their approval without conditions. Anyone who's on a 3 or 4 gets either a threat of losing your program, which has happened across the state, or you get conditions and you have a certain amount of time you have to meet those conditions. One of the challenges with that is the measures that they're using. We are not yet measuring impact on student performance pre-service. So that's a little bit of a challenge program-wide. So when you look at ARTC, gives you a better glimpse of that impact on student performance, because they are a teacher of record, so we're able to measure that. And we're hoping that with other traditional residencies and clinical that we'll be able to provide some sort of predictor for a teacher's impact.
Great. Thank you. Doug, for Prince George's County, what does this, how would you respond to this question of program evaluation and the outcomes that you're using?
Sure. So, for us, we do have a resident teacher program. I didn't speak to that particularly for this session, but one of the things that we do for many of the programs that kind of sit in my shop, if you will, is we use something called quality measures, which you can find online. It actually does kind of help you dissect what the partnership looks like and what the program elements look like if they are successful. So that's been one tool. Of course, we, as students matriculate into the positions that they assume as teachers in the system, we look at their overall evaluation scores. We get feedback, obviously, from end of program as another data point. And then what's been interesting with our resident teacher program in particular, we've produced a lot of teachers of the year in our district have actually been resident teacher programs. So there's something good about that process for those who come in from a different profession or industry and become teachers in our district, seem to actually be really successful teachers. So we still need to do more work at unpacking what is that uniqueness that creates this opportunity. We have a new chief of accountability officer in our district who I know was also really thinking about just how programs are evaluated across the board in our system, but in particular what each office needs in terms of support in evaluating programs. So we're trying to balance those things while also recognizing the success rate of particular programs, because to me, one of your best indicators that show that there's some elements of your program working really effective are how effective they are as teachers at the end. And I would say that is, probably, pretty obvious to everyone, but I think it's a helpful measure. It's just going back and unpacking then what were those key indicators, skills, modules, or whatever in terms of their programming that made them particularly successful. So, but quality measures has been helpful to us.
Great. Thanks, Doug. And Yvonne, how about for Relay and program evaluation, what measures you use?
Yes, so Donna spoke about the statewide evaluation system that all educator preparation programs take part in with our EdPrep report cards. So we report annually to the state. But I think internally, from the Relay perspective, we are evaluating our programs by a few measures. So we're definitely looking at retention of students. between year 1 and year 2, and then of course program completion. Particularly, we take a look at retention and completion for teachers of color. So the residency is an initiative that we are intentionally using or partnering with districts to diversify the pipeline of teachers. And so we want to make sure that we're not only retaining, but also graduating our residents and eventually teachers of color. Gateway passage is also a measure that we are looking at, so making sure that in that first year, residents are completing those 5 gateways that ensure that they are ready to become the teacher of record on day 1. And Gateway 6, which takes place in the first year, is that the second year, is that they actually obtain a teacher of record position with one of our partner schools. So we're measuring that. And then finally, we have built into our MOUs with districts and schools a data sharing agreement. And so this was the first year that was built in, but essentially with the data sharing agreement, our data team or our research team at Relay is able to evaluate the performance of students taught by Relay teachers versus students taught by non-Relay teachers with similar levels of experience. So again, this is the first year that we're implementing that, and we're looking forward to seeing are our teachers really effective? Is what we are doing in terms of the level of support that we are providing to our residents via our graduate level coursework and the deliberate practice and the extra levels of support, is that really working, and do we see a significant increase in students' achievement data versus students who are not taught by Relay teachers? So we're excited to take a look at that.
Great, thanks Yvonne. And I'm actually going to stay with you for this next question, which is how do you match your apprentice teachers with experienced teachers, and how are your experienced teachers trained to prepare your resident teachers?
That's a good question. So at the district level, we have been in talks specifically with principals, essentially asking them, is there an experienced teacher in your building whose content area aligns with the content area that the residence is pursuing certification-wise. We're making sure that they at least have their standard certificate, and so those are like the baseline requirements. I think in our district schools, in our charter schools, it looks a little bit different. So availability is definitely key. So I would say at our charter schools, there are less experienced teachers there, and so making sure that we get teachers who have a senior level of experience, have a standard certificate, and that are able and are flexible enough to take on mentoring or mentorship responsibilities is definitely key. In terms of the training that they receive, so at the district level, those mentors or those resident advisors are typically involved in the statewide mentorship training that the state mentor program provides. They are also in contact with one of our assistant professor of practice who is responsible for the resident program, and so we are providing them with Relay materials as well in terms of their role and their responsibility as a resident advisor. Once a year as well, Relay hosts a residency symposium where our district partners, our school partners, and then also our resident advisors fly out to Colorado and engage in about 2 days of professional development where they learn more about their roles and responsibilities as resident advisors and how to support our year one residents in particular through that gradual on-ramp. So statewide support, and then also we provide support and coaching from Relay.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Yvonne. We have another question that's very similar to that, and so I'm going to start, Doug, with you on this one, and it really builds on the question that was directed to Yvonne and the answer that she provided, recognizing how critical the support is for these new teachers once they're placed in the classroom as the teacher of record in order to encourage them to really stay. So the question is, what are some specific strategies used to support the paraprofessionals, the non-traditional students, those who are coming through these various programs and landing in a classroom? Doug, I know you talked a little bit about your efforts to mentor these teachers, either that program in particular or other efforts that you have in Prince George's County to provide the kind of support that will really help these teachers develop and stay in the classroom. What does that look like in Prince George's County?
Sure. So for us, if you're a resident, through our COMAR, through Maryland's regulations, they're required to have a mentor teacher. So that's really where our work in my office actually is housed in terms of providing that level of support. We work in concert with our colleagues in human resources together to build, I think, a really, really tremendous induction program. We call it PEEP, Professional Educators Induction Program, which is, we have a kickoff over the summer where we actually indoctrinate all of our new folks and, kind of give them the lay of the land and provide some level of support where their eyes are glossed over with the amount of information they could receive as a new person joining the team. But we also have monthly sessions that are open to conditional teachers, new teachers, and seasoned teachers alike, where we provide opportunities that really help frame their craft. So we focus on, in our district, we use Danielson's framework for teaching that undergirds how they should approach developing their lessons each day. And so we provide ongoing monthly support. We have mentors, we have coaches, we have obviously our schools set up their own induction and buddy programs inside of the school district to provide a level of support. And we offer training through our continuing professional development programs so that teachers, as they continue to build their own skill set, they also have opportunities to get credit in some instances to get their advanced certificate and so on. Along with, I guess, the whole point of, me being part of this conversation is how do we leverage those university partnerships to actually continue to help support and build the capacity of our novice and new teachers and those in the resident program. And so we kind of put our arms around new folks in a really good way, and we know that induction isn't just a one and done type of event. It's actually a process over years. And so we continue to try to strengthen our induction program so that we can support all of the new members of our teaching force. And so those are some of the things that we do. I think we have a pretty robust way of supporting them.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Donna, what does this look like at Wilmington? Specific strategies to support?
We begin our ARTC program with a summer institute that's pretty intensive, and just as Doug talked about, we use the Danielson's framework here as well, and across all of our teacher prep programs, they're evaluated using the same tool that that's going to be used with them when they become teachers. And that is true for what we do in the Summer Institute as well. We go through some pretty rigorous exercises, problem of practice related to the components in the framework. And we model and practice some of the classroom management strategies and routines and rituals and talk about the critical pieces of each part of a class day or period. And every candidate is assigned a mentor teacher, as Yvonne said, through the statewide induction program, but as well we have a university coach that through our gradual release model, when they're first hired as a teacher of record, that coach spends at least one day a week in there with those candidates and working with them on specific strategies. It really is, as I said in the slides, we try to personalize it based on their needs. And those needs are vast. I mean, there's a lot of emotional coaching going on at the beginning of the school year. And I think part of that is giving them the perspective of where they are. In many cases, you know, they are paras. They have been in the classroom, but sometimes that's a double-edged sword. So they're also their own biggest critics, and they feel like they're failures. And we have to really work with them on understanding that they are where they're supposed to be in that continuum, and they are going to continue to get better. We use videotaping a lot, and we encourage our candidates to start videotaping early and often. And we use, as part of our coursework and fieldwork, an annotation process where they have to critically sit down and look at their teaching and analyze it and then reflect on that practice and what they'll do differently. As well, their mentor, teacher, and their coach do the same with their videos. So we take it from like Doug said, we give them a big old hug too and get them into the system and get them to understand it is not going to happen overnight. It is a gradual process, and they are going to continue to get better. And then we find out what tools are lacking in their toolkit, and we help them to build up that toolkit.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Donna. And Terri and Chanell, this will probably wrap up our Q&A session, but I want to give you a chance to answer this question as well. So specific strategies that you have in place to support your teacher residents once they're in the classroom.
Yeah, I think for us, most of that is facilitated by our partner. I mean, in most cases, we are giving guidance to principals around what it means to house a resident and also thinking about them where it is possible as a future employee. So we have given some guidance around that directly to principals, but from our partners' perspective, they also have, you know, some of the same things that were already sort of shared by the other folks on the call. It's doing like weekly visits, and there's lots of coaching. There's inductions. They generally have or kick off with a summer institute, and the purpose of that is really to start to preempt some of the things that they are going to experience and just help them to understand the context of it and strategies to navigate through it. So I think the strong kickoff prior to the start of the school year is really key. One of the things that we will be adding this year that we did not do previously is a separate part of their orientation that is specifically about expectations of residents within the district so that they understand these are all the processes that are going to impact you this year. And I mean, from our standpoint, it really is a lot of how do you navigate the district. I think in our scenario, it may be slightly different because they are also School District of Philadelphia employees as well as residents. So helping them to understand how to access supports and services here at the district we recognize is really critical. So that piece we'll be pushing in on as well. But I think the ongoing monitoring of the classroom experience, the instructional routes, all those kind of things are facilitated by the partner with some touch points with the principal through the mentor teacher.
Great, thank you. I'm afraid we're going to have to, our time is up, so we'll have to conclude the webinar. I just want to say thank you to all the presenters for sharing your insights and to the audience for attending the presentation. There's obviously a lot of very interesting work here. There were more questions that we didn't get to, unfortunately. So I do just want to, Jacob is going to go through a couple slides here. So there are some resources and relevant research for those interested in learning more. We also have the contact information, I believe, on the next slide for today's presenter. So I would encourage you to reach out if you have additional questions or your questions didn't happen to get answered in the time that we had today. We also ask that you please submit feedback to the presentation team through the survey link in your browser window that will come up when the event concludes. We really appreciate this kind of feedback. The Rel Mid-Atlantic will use your responses to the survey questions to plan future webinar events. And just as a reminder, the on-demand recording will be available one day after this webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you following the registration. So we encourage you to go ahead and access that. And the recording and transcript will also be posted on the Rel Mid-Atlantic website in the coming weeks. So once again, my thanks to everyone for attending today's webinar presentation. Have a good day. Bye.